Hey guys, tonight we step into the shadowed forests and smoky villages of 16th century Japan. You can smell the sweat of armored soldiers clashing in the fields beyond the mountains. The bamboo groves rattle in the wind. Your tiny feet crunch gravel as you pace behind your father. He's stern, quiet, watchful. A man with a blade always within reach. There are no playgrounds here, only training courts. No lullabies, only the rhythm of clashing swords and distant shouting. You're born into a world that doesn't want you to be soft. And you won't be. Not if you want to live. Not if you want to win. You probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You are born in the spring of 1584. Your given name is Benosuke. You do not remember your mother. She either died giving birth or vanished soon after. There is no record of her, only stories. Your father, Shinmen Munisai, raises you in the quiet plains of Harima Province. The house smells of cedar. The floors creak under his calloused feet. He's a swordsman, some say a killer. He doesn't say much. Outside your small home, the Sengoku Jidai rages. This is the age of warring states. Dozens of clans wage constant war for land and power. There is no central rule, just ambition, fire, steel, rice taxes, horses ridden hard into the mist. You don't play with other children. Your toys are sticks carved into daggers. Your lessons are how to move silently, breathe evenly, strike cleanly. Your father trains you with short shouts and hard slaps. You bleed often. You learn quickly. He tells you that kindness is a luxury, and hesitation is a death sentence. By age 7, your forearms are stronger than they look. You can hold a wooden bokken longer than most grown men. You sleep on a mat near the embers wake before sunrise, and eat plain rice with pickled radish if the stores are good. If not, you eat nothing. Villagers pass your house without making eye contact. Some believe your father killed a man in the service of Lord Shinmen. Others say he killed 5. He rarely speaks of it. You learn not to ask questions. One day, he disappears. No explanation, just gone. Some say he was called to battle. Others whisper that he was killed for past debts. You don't wait for answers. You stay. You train. You are alone. The world beyond your village is moving. In the east, Toyotomi Hideyoshi is trying to unify Japan. In the west, rebels still dig in their heels. You know none of this. You only know the rhythm of your breath and the weight of your bokken. You swing until your palms blister, then harden, then split again. At night, you listen to frogs. You press your ear against the floor and feel the weight of silence. You learn to read by candlelight, religious scrolls, fables, copies of Sun Tzu's Art of War and old Chinese poetry. You are drawn to the structure, the simplicity. You see that war is not chaos. It is math, geometry, flow. Sometimes mercenaries stop by the village and talk in low tones. You watch their armor glint in the moonlight. You study the angles of their stances. how they rest one hand on the hilt without gripping it. Relaxed, but ready. You mimic them in your shadow. One day, a traveling monk passes through. He offers food in exchange for shelter. You don't speak much, but he watches you train in the clearing. He tells you about Musashi village, where your family name comes from. You like the sound of that. You begin calling yourself Miyamoto Musashi. No one corrects you. The monk leaves behind a silk-wrapped scroll. It contains a passage you read over and over. The body is but a sheath for the spirit. The blade is its extension. You don't fully understand it, but you feel it. You begin to see your sword as something beyond wood or steel. You begin to move differently, more like a whisper than a shout. You grow tall, gangly but dense with muscle. By 12, you are a head above most men. You don't smile much. Your eyes stay narrow not from suspicion, but from study. You are always watching, calculating. Historians still argue whether you had any formal training after your father disappeared. Some claim a masterless samurai took you under his wing. Others suggest you trained alone, using stolen scrolls and observation. You never left a clear record. You let others guess. You spend your days walking the paths near the river, practicing footwork on slippery stones, timing your breath with the current, listening for the crunch of gravel behind you. You begin to spar with strangers. You don't tell them your name. You don't ask for theirs. If they lose, they walk away. If you lose, you learn. One evening, as the sky turns the color of wet ash, you sit on a hill and watch a distant village burn. You smell the smoke hours before you see the flames. You don't flinch. You don't move. That night you sharpen your bokken until the edge could split bamboo. You sleep under the stars, arms crossed over your chest, eyes half open. Ready. You are 13 years old. The village elder's voice crackles like brittle pine bark as he delivers the news a warrior has arrived, a challenger. A man from the nearby Shijo school of swordsmanship is seeking combat to demonstrate his form. It's meant to be a polite exhibition, nothing fatal, just a show of skill between trained men. You are not yet a man, but you step forward. No one laughs. You are 13. Your hair is tied loosely behind your head. Your hands are large for your age. The wooden sword you carry looks like a toy, but there is no mischief in your walk. You nod once to the elder who pauses confused. Then he bows slowly. The challenger's name is Arima Kihei. He is a trained swordsman, a professional duelist. He travels with 2 attendants and a scroll declaring his credentials. He expects a match with a senior, someone with a title. Instead, he sees you, a tall boy with dirt under his fingernails and a bokken wrapped in worn cloth. He laughs. He should not have. You do not speak. You approach calmly. No bow, no announcement. You unsling the bokken and step into the dirt circle drawn in the earth. Kihei doesn't draw. He waves you off with a bark. Go back to your goats. He begins turning to speak with the elder. In that half-beat of arrogance you strike. One blow, diagonal, left shoulder to right hip. His body crumples first to the knees, then face forward into the dust. Blood leaks through his sleeve. He doesn't move. Silence. You lower your sword. You step back. You do not run. This is your first duel. You spend the night alone in the mountains, hidden among cedar roots. The air is cool and you do not sleep. You do not regret. You do not celebrate. You simply wait for morning. By sunrise, the village elder finds you. He kneels. He offers water and rice. He says no one is pursuing you. Kihei's school has written it off as a misunderstanding. You know better. You will not return. You sling your pack over your shoulder. You begin to walk east. Your feet carry you through rice paddies and broken roads, across rope bridges where wind howls like ghosts, past villages where mothers pull children inside as you pass. You don't look back. You are not a boy anymore. You're not sure what you are, but it isn't that. Historians still argue whether Kihei died that day or simply never fought again. Some say he lingered for weeks before succumbing to infection. Others claim he returned home and retired in silence. Either way, he never drew his sword again. You never mention his name again. You enter another province by crossing a river at dawn. Mist rises from the surface like old breath. You wade through slowly, sandals in one hand, sword in the other. On the far side, you wring out your clothes and keep walking. You spend nights sleeping under shrine eaves with only straw for warmth. During the day, you chop wood for food. You watch the local samurai train. You never ask to join, but they notice you. The way you study their forms, how you shadow their movements when they turn away. One young warrior invites you to spar. You nod. He gives you a real blade. The metal feels different, alive almost. Heavy yet alert. You win. He offers to teach you more. You refuse. You are not interested in schools. You begin to realize that every sword school teaches something slightly different. But none of them teach everything. Most rely on tradition, not truth. They repeat forms for repetition's sake. You prefer adaptation. You begin calling your evolving technique Hyoho strategy, not style. You do not yet use two swords. That will come later. You wander farther, crossing through the remains of battlefields where ash still clings to the grass. You study the placement of bodies, the shapes of weapon scars in the soil. You memorize the terrain even though the fighting is over. You are learning without asking. One morning, a woman offers you boiled millet in exchange for chopping wood. You do so. She asks your name. You tell her. She nods, then makes a curious sound in her throat. There was once a swordsman called Musashi. He walked like you. You walk on. You find employment escorting a merchant through forest trails. He pays poorly but feeds you well. He talks constantly. You do not. He tells you about the Yoshioka clan in Kyoto, renowned for their swordsmanship. Arrogant but unmatched in skill. He says no one can beat them. You nod quietly. That night you watch fireflies rise from the tall grass like drifting embers. You think about the Yoshioka. You imagine facing them. Not one, all of them. You begin training harder. You tie stones to your wrists to build endurance. You run barefoot through frozen streams to control your breathing. You fight your reflection in still water until your balance improves. You do not sleep deeply anymore. One day, while passing through a small town, you are challenged by a brash young samurai from a local dojo. He sees your sword, scoffs at its worn edge, and declares his intent to test your worth. You accept. You do not move as he swings. You let him close the distance, wait until his blade commits. Then you shift your feet slightly, one blow to the temple with your bokken. He drops, eyes rolling. You wait. He does not rise. His friends carry him away. You continue eating. News travels faster than feet. Your name begins to echo in taverns. Musashi. Sometimes followed by the child, sometimes the demon. You pay no mind. Names are noise. You listen only to silence and your own breath. A fringe detail that persists in local legend is that you never stayed in one place longer than 7 days. Some say it was superstition. Others say it was caution. You never confirm either. By 14, you are known across 3 provinces. Not for kindness, not for loyalty, only for dueling. You don't carry anything unnecessary. A pouch of salt, a length of cloth, 2 bokken, 1 dagger. You spend 1 week helping repair a burned temple. The monks let you eat in silence. One of them speaks softly to you, says, "The sword should be the last whisper, not the first shout." You remember that. You spend a winter alone in the hills, meditating by frozen streams striking at falling snow. You imagine enemies in every branch shadow. You become faster, quieter. You begin to hear your own heartbeat before you sleep. You are no longer surprised when people challenge you. You are no longer excited either. You walk from village to village, always forward. You walk beneath tall torii gates, their wooden beams weathered gray by decades of wind and rain. The shrine ahead leans slightly to one side, bowed under its own age. You leave a coin in the offering box, clap twice, and bow not for divine favor, but out of habit. You do not ask for protection. You already know how fragile life is. The roads are more crowded now. Soldiers march in loose formations, their spears bouncing with every footfall. You keep to the side, unnoticed. You hear names whispered, Hideyoshi Tokugawa Ishida. These are not your enemies. Their wars are not your wars. But they shape the terrain you walk. The country is shifting. Some daimyo fight for unification, others resist. Castles are rising on new foundations, while old ones smolder in ruin. Trade is increasing. So is taxation. The roads are dotted with more checkpoints. You pass through slowly, silently. Your name doesn't appear on any lists. Yet. You arrive in a town where a skirmish has just ended. The air smells of iron and ash. You count 12 bodies stacked at the roadside. A dog noses through the pile. The townsfolk clean up with grim efficiency. War is not rare here. You keep moving. Historians still argue whether you ever fought in a formal army during this time. Some claim you served briefly under minor lords. Others say you avoided all entanglements with clans or castles. No record binds you to any banner, just footprints in the mud. You start sleeping in old watchtowers and broken granaries. You learn how to light a fire without smoke, how to sleep with one ear open, how to disappear before dawn. Your body hardens. Your mind sharpens. You begin dreaming less. On the road to Mino Province, You meet a group of bandits harassing a rice merchant. You do not intervene immediately. You wait. You listen. When the largest one strikes the merchant, you step forward. No words, just movement. You knock two unconscious before the rest scatter. The merchant stares at you slack-jawed. He offers you everything. You take nothing. That night you sharpen your bokken and wonder what made you act. Not pity, not anger, just instinct. The rice merchant tells others. Your story spreads again. A ghost with a wooden sword. The tall one who doesn't speak. You stop correcting people. In a quiet village near the river you encounter a ronin. Older scarred. He watches you train. Says nothing for hours. Then finally offers to spar. You accept. He fights with a broken rhythm, feints, pauses, sudden strikes. It surprises you. You lose. You bow. He nods once. Says, "Good. Now you'll grow." You stay for 6 days. The ronin teaches you how to read movement, how to strike from stillness, how to see intent before it becomes action. Then he leaves before sunrise, leaving behind only a teacup with a crack down the center. You carry that crack in your memory. On a stormy morning, you pass a battlefield still wet from blood. The soldiers have moved on, but the mud is churned, the ground pockmarked. Bits of armor stick from the earth like broken teeth. You count over 50 arrows embedded in a single tree. You sit under it. You meditate. It becomes your practice to sit where death has passed and remain unmoved. You learn to feel the energy that lingers. You learn to let it pass through you. You fight again that week. A brash swordsman looking for a name. You don't remember his name. You remember his stance, too wide, too forward. You end it with one strike to the ribs. He coughs blood, but survives. He thanks you. You walk away. You begin experimenting. New grips, offhand attacks, reverse stances. You study your shadow at noon to gauge form. You tie cloth around your eyes to fight blind. You step on dry leaves to practice stealth. You begin using both hands. You pick up a second bokken. It feels awkward at first, then exhilarating, like breathing through 2 lungs for the first time. People start noticing. He fights with 2 swords, one for life, one for death. They don't understand. You don't explain. A fringed tale arises that you once beat 3 men at once using only wooden sticks, no armor. Some say it happened in a gambling den. Others say it was a roadside tavern. No records confirm it. But the story endures. You stop sleeping in inns. Too many questions, too many drunkards. You prefer riverbanks and forest clearings. Your body adapts to cold. Your eyes adjust to moonlight. You can now hear footsteps in the grass long before they reach you. One evening you spot a samurai camp near a lake. You approach quietly. They're roasting eel. You ask to sit. They stare. One recognizes your name. You share no stories, just silence and fish. At sunrise you leave without a word. You hear of the Tokugawa clan rising, of the Battle of Sekigahara drawing near. Lines are being drawn, allies named, betrayals prepared. You wonder if you will be pulled into it. You keep walking. In one town, a child offers you flowers. You take them, bow slightly, and place them in your sash. You carry them until they wilt, then leave them under a rock at a crossroads. You do not believe in omens, but you respect the act. You spend one summer in silence, not a word. You challenge yourself to train travel and defend without speaking. It sharpens your instincts. You begin noticing the way people shift before they lie, the way shoulders tighten before a draw. You begin to feel the weight of presence, yours and others. You begin to master the invisible. You stop introducing yourself. If people recognize your name, they do. If not, it doesn't matter. You become part of the road, the dust, the stillness between destinations. You reach a town nestled in the low mountains where cherry trees lean like old men over the narrow footpaths. The air smells of rain and horses. It is quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that waits for something to happen. You hear it before you see it, a group of men demonstrating sword technique in the square. They wear matching robes, their blades gleaming in the cloudy light. Their movements are sharp, rehearsed, almost theatrical. The crowd claps. Coins are tossed. Pride is thick in the air. You remain in the shadows observing. The banner hanging behind them reads, Yoshioka Ryu. The Yoshioka School. You remember the name. The merchant had spoken of them. Once protectors of Kyoto, now performers in the marketplace. But their pride still pulses strong. You step forward. You ask for a duel. At first they scoff. You look like a vagabond. Your feet are dusty. Your robe is faded. You carry no steel, just two worn wooden swords tucked into your sash. But someone recognizes your name. The whisper ripples. Musashi. Now they look again. Closer. A junior instructor steps up. His name is Seijuro. He is taller than most. Confident. He smiles without warmth. He agrees. The date is set for the following morning. That night, you sleep in a rice barn. The air is thick with the scent of straw. You sharpen your bokken slowly, smoothing each groove. You roll your shoulders. You breathe deeply. You don't dream. At sunrise, the crowd gathers by the bridge outside town. The stones are still slick from rain. You arrive late on purpose. It unsettles them. Seijuro stands waiting, pacing. His brow is tight. You bow. He doesn't. The fight is short. You sidestep his first cut. Counter with a downward strike to the left temple. The wood cracks against bone. He falls. Not dead, but broken. The crowd is silent. You bow again. You leave before questions can form. Historians still argue whether Seijuro died from that wound or simply retreated from public life. Some say he plotted revenge. Others say he became a monk. There is no clear record, just a bruised name. You do not return to that town. But the Yoshioka do not forget. You wander north for a while. The air becomes cooler, the rivers clearer. You find villages where no one knows your name. You help rebuild a bridge. You mend a roof. You do not draw your sword for 3 weeks. Then word catches up to you another Yoshioka Denshichiro seeks revenge. You accept the challenge. The duel is arranged in another field weeks later. Again, you arrive late. You observe from a hilltop before descending. You count the men with Denshachiro more than expected, but you ignore them. He charges. This time, your strike is horizontal. Rib cage. The sound is dull, like chopping a log. He drops instantly. You turn before the others can react. You vanish into the trees. A fringe account claims you shouted something as you left "I fight truth not tradition," but no two tellings agree. You likely said nothing. Now the Yoshioka have lost 2 sons. Their pride is shredded, their reputation questioned. You know they will not stop, so you prepare for a third duel. They name the time. They name the place outside the city near a pine grove. You know it's a trap. The Yoshioka have no interest in honor now. They want to end you. You do not decline. You arrive early this time, before the sun. You crawl through the brush. You count swords. You mark hiding spots. You set your feet. When they arrive, they do not expect your position. You move first, fast, silent, brutal. One by one you cut them down. Some fall without seeing you. Others drop their blades in shock. You do not hesitate. You do not shout. Only one is left a child, the last heir. He runs. You let him go. It is the end of the Yoshioka school as a dueling force. They are never feared again. You vanish once more. You sleep beside a waterfall for a week, letting the roar drown your thoughts. You drink cold water. You eat roots and mushrooms. Your muscles ache. Your hands swell. You do not regret. You grow quiet inside. Historians debate whether this was the moment you truly shifted from fighter to strategist. Some say the ambush forced you to think beyond the blade. Others argue you were always a strategist. This was simply a test. No one agrees. You never explain. From now on, you begin choosing your duels more carefully. You reject offers that feel like theater. You accept only those that feel necessary. Your reputation is now national. Samurai whisper your name over sake. Young men recite your victories. Older ones shake their heads. Too wild, too unconventional, too dangerous. You do not care. You sleep wherever the wind settles. One night, in a tiny fishing village, a drunk soldier stumbles toward you, sword raised. He means to impress his friends. You take his sword and toss it into the sea. No strike, no lesson, just silence. The villagers thank you. You leave before dawn. You begin using both bokken more often now, one in each hand. You train with lanterns, swinging above your head, dodging shadows and light. You strike in curves, not lines. You blend movement with breath. You call your method Niten Ichi Ryu, 2 heavens as 1 school. It is not about speed. It is about timing, control, intention. Most schools teach 1 technique, 1 path. You walk 2 at once. 1 sword for the world. 1 sword for the self. The road to Kyoto is long and coiled with fog. You tread it slowly, 1 step after the other, wrapped in silence. A bundle of rice, a water gourd, your 2 wooden swords. The weight is familiar. Your legs ache from distance, not from battle. Your thoughts are still. The capital city unfolds before you with a low hum. Kyoto breathes differently. The buildings crowd together like secrets kept too long. The courtyards smell of incense and wet leaves. Priests sweep steps in rhythmic silence. Couriers run like shadows through the alleys. You pass unnoticed. You always do. You have heard of the Yoshioka before. You have met them, broken them. Yet in Kyoto, their legacy lingers like a smoke that clings to walls. Patrons still whisper their name with reverence as if the defeats never happened. Some say the real strength of Yoshioka lies not in the sword, but in the family that endures. You know they will not forget, nor forgive. Word spreads. Musashi is in Kyoto. You wait. It does not take long. A letter arrives hand-delivered by a courier with downcast eyes. It is polite, but firm. A challenge. The Yoshioka invite you once more. Not to a private courtyard, not to a quiet field. This time, they invite you to their main school. It is not a duel. It is a test. A statement. A message to those who still speak your name. You nod once, then burn the letter. You walk through the city as though sightseeing. The architecture is crisp. Painted beams, polished stones. You study everything. Not for beauty, for structure, for space. You see where a man might hide, where a sword might be drawn, where footsteps would echo, where retreat is impossible. The Yoshioka school is larger than you imagined. Gates wide enough for horses. Courtyard broad enough for 50 men. Their students are dressed in coordinated blue. They line up as you arrive. They do not speak. A figure steps forward. Genzaemon Yoshioka. Not a fighter. A leader. The elder of the clan. He bows deeply, eyes unreadable. Welcome, Musashi. You bow back. He gestures to the center of the yard. Let us begin. There is no fanfare, no introductions. One man steps forward. A wooden sword, bare feet, tight jaw. You raise your bokken. He attacks quickly, desperately. You disarm him in 3 movements. Another man steps forward, then another. You do not pause. Each man falls, some with broken arms, others with split brows. The sound of wood against bone grows familiar. The air thickens with tension. The onlookers shift uneasily. Still, you do not stop. A 4th challenger hesitates. You strike first. He drops before he finishes drawing. Historians still debate how many men you fought that day. Some say 12. Others claim it was closer to 20. A few fringe sources say 30. You never recorded the number. You simply fought until they stopped coming. When the last challenger drops to one knee, gasping, you lower your sword. No applause. Just wind. Genzaemon steps forward again. His mouth is tight. You have proven yourself, he says. Then softer. Leave Kyoto. You nod. You turn and walk through the same gates, your sandals leaving faint prints in the dust. Outside the school, no one speaks to you, but they look. Their eyes follow you all the way to the edge of the district. You do not sleep in the city that night. You find a temple ruin outside the gates and rest beneath the archway, listening to the distant clatter of a tea house. You do not feel triumph. You feel cold. You wake before dawn and keep walking. Some say the Yoshioka never fully recovered. They trained fewer men after that. Their name became heavy with defeat. The school eventually closed the building repurposed for government offices. Time erases quickly when memory is painful. You do not look back. You move north for a while, then west. You train on mountain ridges. You shadow your own movements in waterfalls. You begin striking with both hands more fluently, letting the swords find their rhythm in your grip. You no longer think about your arms. They move as if guided by breath. You start teaching. Not officially. A boy watches you practice. You correct his stance. A traveler asks to spar. You show him how to read weight in a man's feet. You never accept payment. You tell them, there is no strength without purpose. They nod. Not all understand. You hear talk of a new swordsman rising. Sasaki Kojiro, long blade, precise, elegant, trained in the Chujo Ryu style. Some call him the demon of the western provinces. Others whisper that he fights like the wind, silent, fast final. You don't think of him often, but the name returns again and again. One night in a mountainside inn, a traveler says, "If you ever face Kojiro, come late." You raise an eyebrow. He shrugs. Just superstition. You remember it. Later that week you spar with a horseman who swings from the saddle. You knock him cleanly to the ground. He offers you tea. You share a pot in silence. A fringe tale claims you once trained with a falcon perched on your shoulder to enhance your balance. No records confirm it, but the image persists. You begin carrying a carved wooden sword shaped from boat oars, thicker and heavier than traditional bokken. The extra weight builds your strength, forces your timing to adapt. You practice with it daily until your arms no longer tremble. You sleep less now. Sometimes 2 hours. Sometimes not at all. Your thoughts are sharp even in fatigue. You begin seeing the world as angles and patterns. A man's breath, a bird's wings, the curve of a river. Everything becomes strategy. Everything is timing. Everything is motion, stilled just before release. The sun filters through the bamboo leaves in slender threads. The ground beneath your feet is soft with moss, the air thick with dew. You are alone again, walking narrow paths outside a rural district where trees outnumber rooftops. A fox darts across the trail. You do not flinch. The Yoshioka clan is behind you now, disgraced, scattered, forgotten by all but memory. Yet your name grows louder in the mouths of strangers. Musashi. They say it with a mix of awe and caution. Some believe you are a ghost. Others say you are not human at all. You do not speak to correct them. You spend your days training, not because of fear, not even ambition, only because motion calms you. You draw, strike, pivot, breathe. Again, again, again. You do not seek improvement, only understanding. The way wind bends reeds, the way a stream shapes stone. Movement without struggle. You travel toward Kokura. The Shimonoseki Strait is nearby, and across it lies Ganryu Island. But that meeting is still a long walk away. In a village nestled in the hills, a messenger finds you. His robe is damp with sweat, his face pale from urgency. He kneels and presents a scroll. The seal is unfamiliar, but the message is clear. An official from the Hosokawa clan has taken notice of you. You are invited to demonstrate your swordsmanship. Not in war, in court. You decline. You are not ready to sit. Instead, you continue through the lowlands. Rain follows you. Each night, you dry your sandals by fire, then sleep beside your blade. You begin carving a new bokken, this one even heavier than the last. You find the handle in a driftwood log and shape it slowly with a whetstone. You do not name your swords. You simply use them. In a fishing village by the coast, two brothers challenge you. They are young, proud, and foolish. You tell them to strike first. They do. You disarm them both without blood. Their father watches from a doorway and nods. No words are exchanged. That night you eat boiled fish beside their fire. Stories travel faster than ox carts. By the time you reach the edge of Bizen province, you are met with wary bows and quiet offerings. A woman gives you a handful of dried persimmons. A boy offers to shine your sandals. You accept neither. You bow once and walk on. Then one day it happens. Another letter. This one carries the weight of intent. Sasaki Kojiro has challenged you. Historians still argue whether it was Kojiro himself who initiated the duel or a political maneuver by the feudal lords of the region. Some suggest it was engineered to test loyalty. Others believe it was simply pride. You do not record your motive. You only accept. The duel is to be held on Ganryu Island, named after Kojiro's own style Ganryu, the large rock island. Fitting, permanent, cold. You study the letter again. The time is set. The place is fixed. The tide will rise by late morning. You nod once, then place the scroll in the embers of your fire. It curls to ash. The night before the duel, you sleep lightly in a boathouse on the edge of the strait. The smell of salt and old rope surrounds you. You do not pace. You do not chant. You simply breathe. Before dawn, you take up your carved wooden sword. You shape its final edge. It is long. As long as Kojiro's own Monohoshizao, his drying pole. But thicker, rougher, less refined. You make it from an oar. Not for flair, for reach. The boatman arrives. He bows. You step into the skiff. You do not speak. The journey across the water is slow. Mist clings to the surface like wet silk. You sit cross-legged, eyes closed. Each drop of water that taps the side of the boat echoes like a drumbeat in your mind. You are not late. You are arriving on time for yourself. Kojiro waits on the beach. His students gather behind him. His blade is already drawn. You see him clearly now. Tall, lean, elegant. His posture is flawless. His stance is deliberate. He squints as you arrive, his mouth tight with disdain. "You mock me," he says. He sees your weapon, a wooden oar carved crudely into a sword. You say nothing. You step from the boat, bare feet pressing into wet sand. The air is still. The tide laps gently at the shore. Kojiro tosses his scabbard aside. "You've already lost," he says. You watch the arc of the scabbard fall. You measure the wind in your lungs. Then you move. The clash is brief. Historians differ on the sequence. Some claim he swung first horizontally, aiming for your temple. Others believe he struck upward a slicing arc designed to sever tendon. You see only motion. You shift inside it. You bring your oar blade down one heavy arc onto his skull. A crack, a collapse, silence. Kojiro lies motionless. You step back. You bow. You do not wait. You turn. Step into the boat. The tide carries you away. Behind you, his students call for justice, for vengeance, for sense. You give them none. Later, some claim you cried in the boat. Others say you smiled. A few say you whispered, "I wish it had not been necessary." You say nothing at all. You vanish again. The duel becomes legend. Kojiro is remembered as a master, elegant, disciplined, deadly. You are remembered as something else. Not better, just inevitable. A fringe detail from a sailor's tale says your sword cracked in half as you stepped ashore and you threw both pieces into the sea. There is no proof. Only stories. Ganryu Island bears his name still. Not yours. You prefer it that way. The mountains receive you again like a quiet friend. The air grows thinner. Pine needles soften your steps. The rivers run narrower and colder. You walk without a map. Your body knows the rhythm of a scent of cold wind brushing the neck of leaves, rattling like teeth in the dark. You do not return to cities for a long time. After Ganryu Island, your name swells into something more than a man. You become a warning, a challenge, a whisper passed between warriors over sake cups. Musashi will fight you, if you're ready to lose. You leave the coast behind. Your sandals press deep into wet forest trails. You pause at small shrines to light incense. You pour water for statues. You eat when there's food. You go without when there isn't. You become still. One evening you reach a clearing where two roads cross. There you wait. A ronin appears at dusk. He does not introduce himself. You can tell by his blade's worn hilt and steady eyes he's fought before. He bows. You nod. No words. He attacks fast, diagonal aiming low. You parry. Sidestep. Respond with a thrust that stops just short of his ribs. He pauses, then smiles. You both bow. He continues on his path. Not every fight needs to end in silence. Historians still argue how many duels you fought after Kojiro. Some records list over 60. Others doubt even half that number. You never counted. You only responded. You begin using water as your teacher. You train by streams and ponds, swinging your wooden swords just above the surface. You learn to read ripples. You watch how a single pebble changes everything. You time your strikes to the rhythm of frogs leaping. Your movements become quieter, less forced, more like breath. One morning, a farmer offers you shelter. His daughter is ill. You chop wood for him, draw water, stay 3 days. You carve a comb from cherry wood and leave it by her mat. You do not say goodbye. A fringe legend says you once defeated a wild boar using only a rice paddle. No credible source confirms this. But in one village, a weathered carving on a gatepost shows a tall man with 2 wooden sticks facing a tusked beast. You do not correct them. You seek riverbanks now, not towns. You choose flat stones for balance practice. You walk across them in silence, eyes half closed, letting the wind test your balance. When you slip, you start over. You duel on water, Not literally, but as close as it gets. You find a stretch of shallows where the current pushes knee-high. You invite a challenger to meet you there. He hesitates, then steps in. The water forces both of you to slow down to feel every shift. You strike one's shoulder. He stumbles. You offer him a hand. He takes it. That evening he joins you by your fire. You both eat pickled radish in silence. When he leaves, he bows deeply. You continue moving. In a remote region, you hear of a duel happening at a ferry crossing. You arrive uninvited. A young swordsman boasts of his style. He laughs at your wooden weapons. You do not react. The duel begins. You finish it in 4 seconds. The crowd is stunned. The man lies winded, not wounded. You look at the faces around you. They are not angry. They are thoughtful. You say victory is not proof. Understanding is. Then you leave. You stop carrying coins. When hungry, you fish. When tired, you sleep. When it rains, you find trees. The road becomes your spine. The sky your roof. You begin drawing. With charcoal. With water and ink. On paper. On bark. You sketch birds in flight. Cranes, hawks, herons. You observe how their wings fold and extend. You mirror their movements in your sword drills. You call this practice kensei. Not just sword saint, but sword seer. You no longer fight to win. You fight to see. You refine your two-sword style further. One hand cuts, the other guards. Both move as one. You call this harmony Niten, two heavens, not opposing, balancing. You train by moonlight. You let shadows teach you spacing, distance, depth. You find that darkness removes distractions. There is only form and intent. You begin to teach others, quietly, selectively. A farmer's son, a temple guard, a retired courier. None of them become masters, but each leaves you changed. You once told a student, if your heart is cloudy, the sword will slip. He asked what that meant. You said nothing. He figured it out. You carve new bokken now longer and thinner. You begin balancing them on your fingers, your nose, your toes, not for show, for awareness, for symmetry. You teach yourself to strike with either hand at any angle in silence. A traveler once found you standing in the center of a shallow stream, both swords out, eyes closed, unmoving. He left without speaking. A story survived anyway. You avoid crowded towns. But one evening in a border village, a wealthy merchant invites you to a meal. He insists. Says his son wants to learn. You sit with them. The table is full of fish, rice, sake. You eat little. The son asks, "When did you start winning?" You answer, "When I stopped needing to." He says nothing more. You leave before the sun returns. Some say you spent these years lost in thought. Others say you were preparing for something unseen. A few believe you were already dying, that each duel was your way of sharpening time. You never write about this period, but it marks you. From now on, every step is deliberate, every glance full, every movement measured not for effect, but for truth. The wind changes. You feel it in your joints before it stirs the branches. Leaves tumble across the road, dry and brittle like old scrolls unraveling in the sun. You walk slowly now, not from age, but from attention. Each footfall carries intention. Each breath is deliberate. The nights grow longer, the stars clearer. You begin sleeping beneath pine trees where the needles blanket the ground in silence. The scent of sap becomes familiar, comforting. You are perfecting your form. You do not train harder. You train deeper, slower. Each strike practiced until the motion fades into reflex, then into something quieter, something you no longer think about. You name this place in your life the still edge. A village boy watches you one morning. He hides behind a well, peeking as you swing both bokken in slow arcs, slicing only air. You notice him, say nothing. He disappears. The next day he returns, leaves a bowl of rice on a stone, then runs. You eat. That's all. The weeks pass without challenge. You move through regions untouched by war. Here people grow barley. They trade silks. They pray at small temples. Few carry swords. Even fewer know how to use them. Yet they speak your name. Musashi. They say it like a question. You give them no answer. One morning, deep in the woods, you stop beside a still pond. You set both swords down and close your eyes. You remain motionless for hours. Birds land nearby. Insects crawl across your robe. You hear the water, the wind, your own heartbeat. You begin to understand something new. Not technique, not strategy. Emptiness. You call this discovery the void. Not absence, but clarity. Not nothing, but everything that waits. Historians still debate what inspired this shift in your philosophy. Some suggest it was age. Others believe it was the accumulation of so many duels. A few say you saw something during a storm lightning that split a tree beside you. You never told anyone. You simply changed. You start using both swords only in demonstration now. You rarely fight with full force. You observe instead. You teach when asked. You speak less. You begin to carve. Wood, stone, bone. You fashion small statues of foxes. Carve birds into the walls of abandoned huts. You leave them behind like signatures no one understands. A fringe tale says you once carved a perfect replica of your own face into driftwood and left it floating downriver. Some claim it washed ashore near Osaka. Others say it vanished at sea. You never mention it. You begin sketching more seriously. Animals, trees, people. Your lines are simple, confident. You capture motion in stillness. A crane in flight. A monkey scratching its ear. A warrior mid-step. People offer to buy your drawings. You decline. You draw to see. One evening, you are invited to a temple where calligraphy is practiced by candlelight. The monks recognize you. They bow. They offer brushes. You decline at first, then accept. You paint one character, woo nothing. They ask if it means emptiness. You say, it means readiness. You stay the night in silence. You begin to see the connection between brush and sword, between stroke and strike. Pressure, breath, release. You say to no one. The hand must be empty to receive truth. You leave before morning. A lord sends a messenger requesting your presence. He seeks advice on battle formations. You do not respond, not out of disrespect, but because you no longer give answers. Only presence. You pass through a burned-out village. The fire long since cooled. You kneel by the ruins of a well. You find a scorched flute buried in the ash. You clean it. You carry it with you. Never play it. Later, you meet a woman weaving cloth by the roadside. Her fingers move faster than yours can follow. You watch. She smiles. "It's all pattern," she says. You nod. Then walk on. You begin marking time not by the sun, but by rhythm. 3 breaths per step. 5 steps per swing. 7 swings per pause. Your whole day becomes a silent song. You meet a blind swordsman who walks with a carved stick. He hears your steps before you speak. He says, "You move like water over stone." You spar once, slowly, deliberately, no strikes land. He bows. You both sit in silence until dusk, then part ways without a word. Some say this man was the only one you ever feared. Others say he never existed, that he was a vision sent by the gods. You know only that he understood timing. You begin to teach through movement alone. No lectures, no philosophy, just demonstration. You lift your bokken, swing, lower, repeat. Those who understand stay. Those who do not leave. You do not chase either. You sleep in caves now, or hollow trees. The wind becomes your blanket, the ground your mat. You no longer seek comfort, only clarity. One day, a messenger finds you near a cliffside path. He hands you a scroll from a man named Hosokawa Tadatoshi, Lord of Kumamoto. He does not challenge, he invites. You pause for a long time, then nod. It is time. Not to fight, to teach. The road to Kumamoto curves gently through hills that ripple like quiet waves. The air is warm. Cypress trees line the ridges. The smell of smoke from distant cook fires rises in thin gray strands. You walk without hurry. Each step deliberate. Each moment registered and released. The Hosokawa clan is powerful, respected. Their lands well governed, their people calm. There are no burned villages here. No signs of rebellion. The roads are swept. The bridges whole. You notice these things. You arrive at the castle gates just after sunrise. Guards in polished armor stand at attention. They do not draw their swords. They do not speak. They bow slightly and part. You are expected. A steward leads you through stone corridors cooled by thick walls. Paper lanterns hang unlit. You pass courtyards where cherry blossoms drift without wind. Eventually, you are led into a quiet garden where a single figure waits seated on a mat. Hosokawa Tadatoshi. He gestures for you to sit. You do. He pours tea. There are no introductions, no pleasantries. He says, "We have followed your life. You owe us nothing. Still, we invite you." You nod. He continues, "We do not ask you to serve, only to stay. Teach if you wish, write if you prefer. We will not interrupt your path." You remain silent for several heartbeats. Then you speak. "I will not kneel." He nods again. "Then you will stand." Historians often point to this moment as the beginning of your formal transition from swordsman to teacher. But even that word teacher fails to capture what you become. You do not lecture. You do not command. You observe. You demonstrate. You let others discover truth for themselves. You are given a room within the castle grounds. Tatami mat, low table, ink brushes and scrolls. You sleep on the floor. Your wooden swords rest across the door. You eat when food is brought. You speak when words matter. Young warriors visit daily. They come expecting drills, forms, victory. You give them stillness. They ask how to win. You ask why they fight. Some grow frustrated. Others return. You show them how to hold a sword without gripping it, how to walk without leaning forward, how to see without looking. You say, if you strike before understanding, you will miss. They do not always understand. You do not explain twice. One student, eager and sharp, asks to duel. You agree. He strikes fast, precise. You let him. Then, without touching him, you step into his stance, and he stumbles, falls. You say nothing. He bows. He returns the next day. Others begin to take notice. Word spreads. Musashi teaches without teaching. A few older samurai visit. They test your patience, speak in terms of lineage and prestige. You listen. Then raise your wooden sword. You say, this does not care for family names. They understand. Eventually, a fringe rumor begins that your wooden sword can split stone. A guard once claimed to see you carve a line in granite with a single strike. No one verifies this. The stone was never found. You spend your evenings sketching. Herons, waves, fire. You write short poems in the margins. Most are about silence. Some about death. A few about light. You do not show them. They remain stacked beside your mat. You begin carving again. Small sculptures, shrines, handles for brushes, once a flute from cedar. You do not play it. You keep it wrapped in cloth. Visitors increase. Some seek duels. You decline. Others ask questions. You ask them in return. One asks, what is the best strike? You reply, the one you don't need. Another, how do you know when to move? You answer when you're already there. Your responses frustrate some, inspire others. You are not here to convince, only to reflect. Hosokawa Tadatoshi visits occasionally, never as a lord, always as a man. He watches your practice, sometimes drinks tea with you, never speaks of politics. Once he asks, what is the void? You draw a circle in the dirt. He nods, says nothing more. One evening, you watch the sunset from the roof of the watchtower. The sky burns orange and blue. You think of every duel, every step, every breath that brought you here. You feel no triumph, only stillness. You descend slowly, each step soft, final. Historians still debate how involved you were in the Hosokawa military affairs. Some claim you advised on castle defense. Others say you taught formation tactics. A few records suggest you designed drills for archers. But no document bears your name officially. You were never part of any army, only the present moment. One night you walk the grounds alone. A guard spots you and steps aside without command. You pause, hand him a carved ring made of bark, then continue. He never speaks of it again, but wears it always. You are no longer feared. You are respected, even by those who do not understand you, especially by those who try. The morning mist hangs low over the strait. The water below flows without urgency, pulling strands of cloud down with it. You rise early as always. Your body creaks softly but moves with precision. You pour water over your face. The cold reminds you you are still alive. Today the students gather early. You do not call them. They arrive anyway. They form a loose semicircle around the courtyard, each one barefoot, each with a wooden sword held at rest. You walk to the center and nod. They watch. Then without a word you demonstrate. You begin slowly. Right hand forward, blade out, edge down. You shift your weight from heel to toe, pivoting with almost no movement. Your left hand raises the second sword. The two blades draw a wide arc in the air like a hawk tracing a spiral. The students remain silent. You repeat the motion. Twice, 3 times. Then stop. You say timing is not math, it is feeling. They do not respond. They are learning to listen without speaking. One student dares to ask, "Is this what you used against Kojiro?" You pause, then reply, "No, this I used against myself." He nods, not fully understanding, but accepting. That afternoon, you rest under the eaves. A rainstorm moves in quickly. The roof drips steady drops into a cracked basin near your mat. You listen. You think of the duel again. Ganryu Island. Kojiro's glare. The hiss of the oar blade splitting air. The way the world paused as you struck. You wonder if he saw it coming. You never hated him. You did what had to be done. Historians still argue whether you arrived late as a tactic or simply to unsettle him. Some say it was deliberate. Others think the boatmen slowed on purpose. A few believe you meditated on the shoreline to clear your thoughts. You never said. You never will. You leave the garden and walk the length of the western wall. There, a group of younger students is practicing footwork. Their movements are erratic, forced. You observe for a full hour without comment. Then finally, you are trying to control your body. Control your breath instead. One nods. The rest blink in confusion. You show them. One step. Breathe in. One shift. Breathe out. Repeat. Repeat. Until the movement becomes the breath. Until the breath becomes you. You turn and leave. That evening you are invited to attend a court dinner. You do not want to go, but you do. You wear the same robe, carry no weapons. At the table, lords and poets discuss politics, tea taxes, rice yields. You eat sparingly. When asked for your opinion on a recent skirmish in the South, you say, "The land does not care who owns it." A few laugh. One nods. You return to your quarters before dessert. On the way back, you pass 2 guards sparring in the dark. Their forms are clean but predictable. You pause just long enough for one to notice. He freezes, embarrassed. You say, "You're not fighting him. You're fighting his sword. Change that." Then continue walking. A fringe rumor grows among the guards. They say your footsteps cannot be heard, that you can appear behind a man even on gravel. One claims you moved through a locked gate. Another says you passed through fire without burning. You do not address any of it. You are beyond proof. You sleep lightly now, not from fear, from habit. Your dreams are not of battle. They are of rivers, of birds, of walking. You wake before dawn and trace the edge of the garden wall with your hand. The stones are cold, the moss soft. You walk in a straight line, eyes closed, testing your balance. A student watches from a distance. You say nothing, but the next morning you find him doing the same. You nod. The sky that evening is clear. Stars scatter across it like spilled salt. You sit by the pond and watch a single fish break the surface. You think nothing changes. Everything changes. You begin to write again. Not a book yet. Just notes. Short lines. The blade must be empty to be full. Form is not shape. Wind does not plan. A strike begins in the heel. You stack the papers without order. Let them sit. One student asks if you will publish a manual. You shrug. He asks again. You say, "Not yet." The students grow bolder. They question more, not with arrogance, with curiosity. You approve. One asks, "What makes a good swordsman?" You answer, "He knows when to stop." Another asks, "What makes a great one?" You look up at the moon, then say, "He never starts without need." They repeat these phrases to each other for weeks. You remain quiet. Later that month, an old man arrives from the north, a swordsman half crippled. He says he once fought under the same banner as your father. You sit together for an hour. He says nothing about war, only speaks of rivers, of hunting cranes, of waiting too long for something that never arrived. Before he leaves, he bows. You return the bow, lower. That night you do not sleep. You sit cross-legged in the dark, your hands on your knees, listening to the wind pass through wooden beams. You rise before the first bird call. The air in your room is still holding the last threads of night like a breath waiting to be exhaled. You do not light a lamp. You move by memory, each object in its place, each step rehearsed in quiet. You walk beyond the inner walls of the compound, past the practice courts, past the stables, out to the edge of the northern slope where stone steps descend toward a cluster of small caves. You know them well. One in particular has become your retreat, Rayagando, the Spirit Rock Cave. You do not enter it yet. You sit outside facing east. The hills are blue with early light. You listen to the wind press through the trees above. A single pine cone falls and rolls. That's the only sound. You begin your meditation. No posture, no ritual. Just breath. Just the moment. You come here often now. Not to escape, but to center. The students still practice under your guidance, but less directly. They have begun teaching one another. They argue less. They bow more. You are not needed. That is how it should be. You finally step into the cave. It is shallow, but it fits you. The ceiling low, the ground dry. There is no furniture, just your mat, your brush, your scrolls, and silence. You begin to write in earnest. Your movements are steady, your brushstrokes deliberate. Each character placed like a stone in a riverbed meant to endure, not impress. You title your work The Book of 5 Rings. Go, ring no show. 5 scrolls, 5 principles, 5 realities. Earth, water, fire, wind, void. Each section is its own breath, its own form. You begin with earth. You write. In the ground book, I will describe the way of strategy. You continue slowly. You outline what must be known: timing, rhythm, observation, spacing, posture. You write what cannot be taught: intuition, awareness, presence. You write every day, for weeks, alone. Food is brought to you by a boy from the village. He never speaks. You always bow in thanks. You eat what is given. Rice, miso, sometimes dried persimmon. You write the water scroll next. Its tone is fluid, less rigid. You write, water adapts. It finds its level. A warrior must do the same. You describe how a stance is not a rule, but a reflection. How breathing guides motion. How stillness can be louder than action. You never reread what you write. You only continue. Then the fire scroll. Here you shift tone again, direct, sharp. You speak of battle, of chaos, of response, of momentum. You write, in battle, if you make your opponent flinch, you have already won. You describe not just how to strike, but when to strike, and more importantly, when not to. You give examples from your past, though you never name names. You write, do not rely on form, rely on presence. You do not smile as you write, you simply let it move through you. The wind scroll follows. This is not about breeze or gust, it is about style. You review other schools. You note their weaknesses not in insult, but in observation. You describe the narrowness of those who cling to tradition without understanding. You write, you must not imitate, you must absorb. Some historians have debated your intentions here. Were you attacking your rivals, settling old scores, or simply warning the reader not to fall into mimicry? You leave no answer. The 5th scroll is the shortest. The void. Here you slow your brush. You choose each word carefully. You write by void, I mean that which has no beginning and no end. You speak of the absence of expectation, the clarity of pure response. You write, in the void there is possibility. All technique flows from this. It is the softest of the scrolls, and the hardest to understand. You do not finish it in one sitting. You leave the last lines open, unwritten for several days. Then finally at dawn you write, perceive that which cannot be seen with the eye. You place the scroll down. You bow. And you do not write again for days. The cave becomes your rhythm. You spend mornings in stillness, afternoons sketching or training, evenings walking the hillside paths until the moon rises. You meet no one. You speak to no one. And you are not lonely. A fringe story emerges years later that you carved the entire 5 rings text onto the cave walls using a broken blade. There is no evidence of this. The cave walls are smooth, but tourists still tap them softly just in case. One morning, a student climbs the hill. He waits outside the cave. You emerge. He bows. He says nothing, but he carries a letter. It is from the Hosokawa steward. They request that you return to the compound. For rest. For care. You nod. You descend slowly. You carry only one scroll. The void. You are no longer fast. But you are not weak. You simply move with gravity. The students see you return. They lower their practice swords. They bow. And you bow lower. You say nothing. You sleep longer now. Not because your mind is tired, but because your body is. You wake slowly. Your knees ache. Your hands stay stiff until midday. But your thoughts remain clear, cutting through the haze of age like your wooden sword once sliced air. You stay within the inner walls of the compound. No more distant roads. No more night walks along rivers or forest trails. The students bring their practice to you now. They ask fewer questions. They watch more carefully. You train less. You speak more. Not much, but enough. You take up ink and brush again, not for instruction, not for combat theory, but for art. You draw birds most often. Cranes in mid-flight. Owls in stillness. Hawks caught in the moment just before descent. Each line is clean, deliberate, empty of flourish. You leave space on the paper. Let the silence show through. You begin carving again as well. This time from stone. You sit for hours, chisel in hand, carving a narrow fox from river rock. The shape emerges slowly, ears, jaw, tail, until the figure rests with perfect balance. One of the guards finds it and places it near the gate. It is never removed. Your students bring you paper and request poems. You do not write long ones. You prefer brevity. You say, "The sword sleeps, but the wind still listens." Another night rain on the old roof. No war here. They read these verses to each other after training, seated in lines, their wooden swords laid flat beside them. You do not teach these moments. They teach themselves. One afternoon you are asked to meet with a visiting monk. He is tall, his robes faded from many years of sun. He bows deeply and you return the gesture. He says, "I have read your scrolls. They are full of emptiness." You reply, "Then they are full of truth." He smiles, says nothing more. You drink tea together until dusk. After he leaves, you remain seated for a long time. You do not watch the sunset. You listen to it. Historians still argue about your transition into the arts. Some say it began after Ganryu. Others claim it started earlier when you first carved a comb for a sick girl in a mountain village. A few say it was always there, just hidden beneath the noise of steel. You never explain. You simply live it. You begin teaching drawing alongside swordsmanship. You say, "Do not draw what you see. Draw what it is." Your students frown. They ask for more. You say no more. They learn faster. One student skilled with the brush brings you a painting of a tiger leaping from mist. It is beautiful, complex, impressive. You look once, then say, "The tiger has no breath. He burns it the next day, then begins again." You observe with care. You say nothing. The seasons change. Autumn makes itself known in dry leaves and colder wind. The practice court becomes quieter, blades slower, movements tighter. You teach by demonstration again. You walk onto the field, raise your bokken, strike once, then lower it. You say, "This is enough." They understand. A fringe tale from this time claims you once struck a tree so hard that fruit fell from 3 limbs at once. Children repeat the story to each other in Kyoto, but the trees never talk. Your health remains fair, but your appetite fades. You eat half of what's given. You drink only water and barley tea. You sleep before the second moon rises. You write once more. Not with brush, with a knife. You carve a line into a wooden beam in your quarters. A single kanji jing quiet. No one sees you do it, but the word remains. Later, a younger student asks why you no longer demonstrate combat footwork. You reply, "Because I no longer need to escape." He nods, does not ask again. You sketch a heron standing in a shallow pond. You leave the reflection blank. Someone asks why. You say, "Because reflection is not real." Your drawings begin to change, less sharp, more suggestion. You leave out outlines. Let the viewer complete the image, just as you once did with your sword. You sit by the garden each morning. Tea, sunlight, silence. The guards pass you quietly. The students speak more softly near you. A dog begins following you on your walks. You say nothing to it. It stays. You name it nothing. You tell a student, "Every movement is a decision. Every pause is too." They repeat it to others. Soon it becomes part of the lesson. Your carving becomes more fluid. You create small birds from driftwood. You place one on each student's sleeping mat. You do not tell them. They do not speak of it. But each keeps it. You no longer hold a sword with strength, but you still hold it with presence. You demonstrate once slowly. Each student watches as if it were a storm. Then you lower the blade, return it to the rack, bow once, then walk away. The sky begins to pale earlier each morning. Autumn has settled into its quiet rhythm. The leaves drift down without urgency. Smoke from distant hearths rises in thin, even columns. The temple bells chime slowly, each tone stretched long, as if time itself is decelerating. You awaken to this change with no surprise. You sit beside the paper screen that faces east, watching the light move inch by inch across the floorboards. You do not move until it reaches your knees. This is your meditation now, a still observation, a quiet acknowledgement of presence. The scrolls from the Book of 5 Rings lie stacked on your table, tied with simple twine. You do not reread them. You let them exist as they are, finished, present. You do not revise truth once spoken. A student enters with tea. He sets the tray down with both hands and bows. His movements are precise learned, not from imitation, but understanding. You taught him that. You taught all of them now, not by formula, by example. You lift the cup and say nothing. Later that day you step into the garden. You walk the stone path slowly, placing each foot fully before lifting the next. The gravel between the stones shifts softly under your step. The trees are thinning now. More sky shows through. A student follows behind barefoot, mirroring your pace. You do not turn to acknowledge him, but you know he's there. You begin a new set of scrolls, not about sword, not about combat, not even about movement, about perception. You call them the dokodo, the way of walking alone. You do not plan them. They arrive, one line at a time. You write, accept everything just the way it is. Then, do not seek pleasure for its own sake. Then, do not under any circumstances depend on a partial feeling. Each sentence arrives without weight, as if it had always existed and you are simply retrieving it from stillness. There will be 21 lines. No explanations, no argument, just observations turned inward. Historians still discuss the nature of this text. Some see it as a confession, others a final distillation of strategy. But it is neither. It is a farewell. Without drama, without sorrow. You do not decorate the scrolls. No borders, no stamps. Just brush ink and space. A fringe tale from this time says you burned your other writings before beginning the dokodo. But the scrolls survive, preserved, copied, read by those who will never hold a sword. You still meet with students each week. They now ask different questions, less about tactics, more about life. One asks, how do you know when to let go of victory? You say, when it starts to speak louder than peace. Another, is it wrong to feel pride in skill? You respond only if it blinds you. They do not write these answers down. They remember them. The lessons move deeper. One afternoon, you observe a pair of students sparring in the courtyard. Their movements are slow, thoughtful. You nod once, then step away. You leave no comment. You no longer need to. You spend longer in the cave now. Regando. You carry a small cushion with you. You sit for hours at the back wall facing stone, not meditating, not sleeping, just being. The cave accepts your silence. One morning, you find a small flower blooming just outside its entrance, a tiny white petal emerging from dry soil. You leave it untouched. You sketch it later. It becomes your final drawing. You do not sign it. A student visits, standing at the edge of the cave. He says nothing. You beckon him forward. He bows, then sits beside you. You pass him the brush. He draws the same flower, but his lines tremble. You do not correct him. You say, even a flawed mark is sincere if it does not hide. He bows again. The next day he returns. He brings paper. You do not ask why. He draws in silence while you sit beside him. This continues for 5 days. Then he stops coming. You understand. He no longer needs you. You feel your body growing slower, not weaker, just farther from urgency. You eat only rice, drink water, move little. But your mind is clearer than it has ever been. You revisit your own words. You read Respect Buddha and the gods without counting on their help. You nod. The afternoon light filters through the trees, casting long shapes on the ground. You sit with it, not watching, not reflecting, just sitting. A final student asks, "How do I know I'm ready to walk alone?" You answer when you stop asking. He bows, does not return. That evening you light a single candle. You sit beside it, hands on your knees, eyes open, breath even. You whisper nothing. You fear nothing. You wait for no one. The candle burns low. Wax pools in a smooth ring around the base. The light it casts does not flicker. It holds steady, just enough to cast a soft shadow of your hands resting palm down on your knees. You feel the shape of the cave around you, not as walls, but as presence. You do not move. You do not sleep. You simply remain. The next morning your body wakes slowly. Your bones announce themselves with quiet pulses, but you feel no pain, only the subtle weight of existence resting fully in the moment. Outside the village, dog greets the wind with a low bark. You close your eyes, listening. In the distance, footsteps, soft, deliberate. A familiar voice calls from beyond the cave sensei. You recognize it but say nothing. The student appears in the entrance, waiting with bowed head. He does not enter. You motion once with 2 fingers. He approaches and kneels. In his hands a folded cloth. Inside a single scroll. He unwraps it and sets it before you. It's your own writing, copied, studied, now returned. You pick up the scroll, read the opening line. Do not hold on to possessions you no longer need. You return it without a word. The student bows low and exits. He will not return. You spend that day walking the lower path below the compound. The slope is steep, but your feet remain steady. Each step a controlled descent. You pass a plum tree you once planted. It has grown crooked but healthy. You brush your hand against the bark as you pass. Back inside, you review your scrolls again. You open the fire scroll. You reread. When you attain the way of strategy, there will be nothing you cannot understand. You close it. The brush beside your mat is dry. You dip it once in ink, then write a single kanji on a clean sheet, Meng Dream. You let it dry, then fold the paper. Later that week, a messenger from the Hosokawa steward arrives. He asks if you will return to the castle for rest and care. You look at your hands, then at the scrolls, then at the cave. You say, soon. You are not lying. You spend the next morning shaping a final bokken. It is short, light, balanced. You do not name it. You do not use it. You place it near the entrance of the cave leaning against a stone. Let it be found. Your appetite has diminished. You take only water, a small bowl of rice, once a day. Still your strength does not falter. It simply quiets. A student visits and offers to read one of your poems aloud. You nod. He reads with clear voice. The moon rises, but the blade remains still, both sharp, both cold. You bow once when he finishes, then motion for him to go. He does. The cave becomes a second skin. You are part of its silence. One evening, you light 2 candles, then 3. You arrange them in a line. Sit before them and wait. You breathe. You do not count the minutes. You feel them pass. You remember the riverbank where you fought your first duel. You remember the dirt in your teeth, the taste of sweat, the sting of your own breath in your lungs. You remember Kojiro, the crack of the wooden oar against bone. You remember your father's silence, the pressure of his hand on your shoulder. You remember walking alone, always walking. You remember the void, not absence, but possibility. The 3 candles burn low. You close your eyes. Historians still debate the timing of your final days. Some say you died in the cave. Others say you returned to the Hosokawa estate and passed in a seated pose. There is no agreement, only quiet. A fringe tale claims you disappeared entirely, leaving behind only a single drawing of a heron in flight pinned to the wall of the cave with a wooden pin. But no such drawing has ever been found. You wake one final time with the morning light pressing through the trees. You rise slowly. You dress in your old robe. You place your 2 wooden swords across your lap. You sit, still, present. No fear, no regret, no sound, no final words, only readiness. The Hosokawa retainers find you still seated. Your eyes are closed. Your hands rest lightly on your thighs. The folds of your robe are undisturbed. The wooden swords are perfectly balanced across your knees. They do not disturb you. They kneel. They wait. Only when the light fades from the cave's mouth and the wind begins to rise through the trees do they approach. They do not find breath, but they find presence. They carry you down the slope without speaking. You are not heavy. Your body seems smaller now, quiet, hollowed out like a gourd emptied only of weight, not meaning. They bring you to the estate, to the small temple hall where students have gathered. There is no chanting. There is no spectacle. They place your body in a seated position, wrapped in your robe, your hair tied back simply. You face east, as you asked. Your scrolls are placed nearby, wrapped tightly. The Book of 5 Rings, the dokudo, your sketches, your carving tools. A small wooden crane, wings half folded. Your final sculpture, a heron. Perched on a flat stone watching nothing. A monk lights incense. He bows. So do the students. So do the guards. So does the steward. Hosokawa Tadatoshi himself visits late at night. He kneels, remains there for a long time. He says nothing. The following morning, your students carry you to the burial site, a narrow clearing beyond the main garden shaded by a cedar tree. You are not placed lying down. You are buried standing upright, a wooden sword at your side, as you instructed. Historians still debate this moment. Some say the upright burial is symbolic, a warrior never rests. Others argue it reflects your final lesson to die as you lived prepared, poised, and facing forward. There are no public ceremonies, no statues, no fanfare, just earthstone and the quiet rustle of pine needles in the wind. Years pass, then decades, then centuries. Your name becomes more than a name. It becomes a study, a path, a question. You are spoken of in military schools, in art circles, among poets and monks, among soldiers and travelers. You are called Kensei Sword Saint, not for how many you defeated, but for how little you left behind. Your scrolls are copied, read, mistranslated, reprinted, studied, ignored, then studied again. The Book of Five Rings is taught in business seminars, its lines quoted by men in suits, its timing adapted to strategy of profits and markets. You do not object. You are no longer here. The Dokodo becomes a list of life rules, shared by those in search of peace, discipline, simplicity. Few understand that it was never meant for anyone else. It was your own mirror, held once, then released. The cave becomes a site of quiet visits. Pilgrims walk the narrow path, sit on the stone where you sat, light incense, bow, say nothing. A fringe legend claims that once a year a heron returns to the clearing where your grave stands, that it stands motionless for hours, then vanishes. No record confirms this, but the story persists. You remain present, in movement, in stillness, in ink, in silence. You are not remembered because of how you died. You are remembered because of how you remained empty, how you used form only as a vessel, and truth as a blade. The man who walked alone and carried nothing, not even himself. The decades roll on slow and tireless. Japan changes. Lords become officials. Swords are worn less often than not at all. Peace settles like fine dust across the land. Roads widen. Castles become museums. The warriors fade. But you do not. Your name remains spoken softly across generations. Musashi, not as a man, as a principle, as a rhythm, as a pause before movement. In Kyoto, students of martial arts trace your duels on maps. They walk the same trails, touch the gates of former dojos, visit the riverbank where you defeated the Yoshioka clan. They speak your name with equal parts awe and curiosity. In remote temples, monks read from worn copies of your Five Rings scroll. They discuss the earth book as one might discuss stonework firm, dependable, simple. The water scroll as they would, streams flowing but directed. Fire for conflict, wind for perspective, void for insight. But they do not agree on its meaning. They sit cross-legged beneath cedar trees and debate. Did Musashi write this as a warrior or as a monk? Did he fight to understand or understand to stop fighting? Historians still argue whether your philosophy was always there beneath the duels waiting to rise, or whether it was born later after you'd bled enough, walked far enough, endured enough to finally stop. There is no answer, only your words, carved carefully, deliberately, left behind without footnote. Some try to recreate your training. They build routines, strike wooden posts at sunrise, walk miles barefoot, balance stones on their heads, try to master 2 swords at once. But the form without presence yields only fatigue. You wrote fixation is the enemy of understanding. Still they try. At art exhibitions, a simple ink drawing is displayed behind glass. A single heron mid-flight. The signature, Musashi. No flourish, no seal, just a slash of black on white. Visitors stand in silence before it. Some walk away puzzled. Some do not. One man whispers, "It feels like movement stopped." The attendant nods and says nothing. In a Tokyo bookstore, a reprinted edition of the Book of Five Rings sits on the shelf. New cover, crisp type. Its back summary calls you the ultimate strategist. A child picks it up, skims a few lines, doesn't understand, but something holds him. He returns it, then thinks about it for days. On another continent, a business executive quotes your text at a conference. You must understand your own intention before understanding another's. The audience nods, jots it down. They think of negotiations, profits, market timing. You did not write for them, but you are not offended. Your words move regardless of destination. A museum displays your wooden sword weathered, splintered at the grip. They do not know for certain that it was yours, but the balance is right. The weight feels correct. People pass by hands behind their backs reading the plaque Miyamoto Musashi, 1584-1645. Warrior, strategist, artist. That is all. No mention of how you walked away from every duel. No mention of how few needed to be fatal. Just a name and years. A fringed tale circulates online that your cave Regondo is haunted not by sorrow, not by spirit, but by concentration itself. That sitting within it causes the breath to slow the heart, to steady the mind, to narrow into silence. A vlogger films himself trying. He lasts 6 minutes before speaking aloud. There's nothing here. He misses the point. At sword schools across Japan, instructors nod to your example, not as a technique to copy, but as a caution. Musashi never repeated his own style, one says. He changed with the opponent, the weather, the breath. His student asks, "Then how can we learn it?" He replies, "You don't. You simply arrive. The art of your two-sword method is still practiced. Niten Ichiryu, the one school of two heavens. It survives, taught slowly, quietly, passed from hand to hand. They still use wooden swords at first, then steel. But they never forget the wood, because the strength was never in the metal. It was in the intent." One instructor holds up both swords and tells the class, "The right hand for the world, the left hand for yourself." He does not explain further. He does not need to. You continue walking, not with feet, with pages, with ideas, with breath carried forward by strangers. Your grave remains marked only by stone. No statue, no flowers, just a weathered slab in the soil angled forward facing east. People come. They bow. They leave in silence. Sometimes a bird lands nearby, watches, then takes off again. Years become centuries. Time unrolls like a scroll left in the sun, edges curling ink fading. The characters still legible but softening around the edges. You remain. Your name. Musashi detaches from flesh. It becomes a symbol of discipline without rigidity, of violence without cruelty, of presence without noise. The warlords of your youth are dust now, their castles hollowed, their flags stored behind glass. But your influence is not tied to walls or thrones. It is traced in lines of ink, in rhythms of training, in the pause before decision. A young calligrapher in Nara uses your brushwork as reference. He copies the character for void 100 times. Never gets it right. He writes it once more imperfect again, then sets the paper aside and begins to breathe slower. He doesn't know why, but he's learning. A martial artist in Brazil reads your scrolls in translation. He tries to adapt your rhythm to grappling, to the tempo of movement. He feels the lesson isn't in grip or hold, but in breath. He stops trying to win. He starts listening. You never left Japan, but your words did. Historians continue to search for pieces of your life. They debate the exact location of your duels. They argue about your mother's name. They dispute your age at death, some say 60, others 62. None of it changes what you left behind. Some claim you fought over 70 duels. Others say far fewer. But they all agree you never lost, except the ones you didn't need to fight. You do not appear in official registers of state, but your name surfaces in footnotes, in margins, in letters between men who studied you long after the blade was folded away. You are not taught as doctrine. You are read as reminder. In the art schools of Kyoto, students imitate your sketches. The owls, the cranes, the subtle lines. A teacher lifts one example and says, "This is close, but not yet quiet." The student nods, begins again. One day a craftsman carving bokken in the countryside adds a small mark under the hilt, 2 vertical lines, and a short stroke across. He doesn't advertise it. He doesn't explain. He calls the design the edge in stillness. Only a few recognize it. They say nothing. At a university lecture in Tokyo, a professor projects a slide of your Dokodo. The audience reads the 21 precepts in silence. Then he asks, "Which of these do you follow?" A student raises her hand. "None." The professor nods. "Then which do you return to?" She says, "All of them. You didn't write them to be commandments. You wrote them to be mirrors. Each line a reflection. Each phrase a shadow that sharpens only when held against light. One of your precepts reads, 'Do not let yourself be guided by the feeling of lust or love.' Some call it cold, but others understand it is about clarity, about not mistaking feeling for form, about not letting the heart carry the sword. Another says, 'Do not collect weapons or practice with weapons beyond what is useful.' Collectors ignore this, but a few students write it on the inside of their scabbards, just to remember, just to stay honest. The cave at Regondo still stands, its entrance narrowed by time, but still open. Moss grows along the walls, rainwater pools in shallow depressions. Tourists come with cameras. Monks come with silence. A child enters once holding his grandfather's hand. He asks, "What is in the cave?" The grandfather says, "Just a man who sat still." The boy thinks about this all the way home. A fringe tale says the cave hums if you breathe just right. No one has proven it. But a few linger long enough to try. In the quiet villages of Kumamoto, old men still carve bokken from cedar. They sand the edges smooth, balance them on one finger before tying a cotton wrap around the grip. They sell them without price. only to those who ask no questions. A master swordsman today holds a seminar. He does not demonstrate with flourish. He does not speak often. He simply steps into position, raises one sword, then raises the second, pauses, then bows. No swing, no lesson, just the echo of readiness. Later, one of the students asks, "Was that Musashi's technique?" The master says, "That was Musashi's pause." Your influence lives not in the moves copied, but in the moments before motion, in the choice not to strike, in the empty space, the space between. Your name crosses borders now, translated, adapted, interpreted, misquoted, but still it holds. Musashi. To some you are a swordsman, to others a philosopher, to a few a contradiction. A killer who spoke gently, a strategist who preached detachment, a teacher who refused schools. No one owns your legacy, and you never tried to. In Western libraries, your scrolls sit on the same shelf as Marcus Aurelius, Sun Tzu, Lao Tzu. Readers flip between them, searching for guidance in chaos, for calm in movement. Some find answers. Most find silence. You would have approved. In a small dojo in Okinawa, an instructor lays out 2 wooden swords on the floor. He tells his students to bow. Then he asks, "Which one do you pick up first?" They hesitate. He says, "You've already lost. If you had to choose, it's too late." He doesn't say your name, but he doesn't have to. Elsewhere, a sculptor builds a statue of you, not in armor, not with swords drawn, but seated, cross-legged, one hand resting in the other, eyes closed, no title carved into the stone, no plaque, just presence. A fringe rumor starts that a wealthy businessman in New York keeps a copy of your Dokodo on his desk and reads it every Monday. His assistant says he never quotes it, just turns one page, then works in silence. You are still walking, quietly. Every time someone picks up a sword without anger, you are there. Every time a student studies not to defeat, but to understand, you are there. Every time someone listens before answering, waits before acting, breathes before deciding, you remain. Your grave remains unchanged. No offerings, no incense, only wind, only stillness. And yet people visit. One woman travels across the ocean just to stand before it. She carries nothing, leaves nothing. She stands for 10 minutes, then bows once and walks away. She doesn't speak of the trip afterward, but she begins waking earlier each day, begins listening more, begins walking slower. In a classroom far from Japan, a philosophy professor presents your writings. She explains, Musashi believed that style should be born from experience, not imitation, that truth is not in form, but in application. A student asks, "So did he have a religion?" She says, "He had timing." Another student asks, "Did he believe in anything?" She says, "Only what he could feel in motion." The classroom falls quiet. That was your goal, not to inspire, not to lead, to still. In the martial arts community, arguments continue. Was your 2-sword technique superior to others? Was your late arrival at Ganryu Island strategic or accidental? Were you brutal or composed? Historians still cannot agree, and you left no answers, only rhythm, only breath, Your drawings continue to circulate. A sketch of a dragonfly, wings blurred in motion. A hawk on a pine branch half turned. A single flower in a wide expanse of white paper. Each one understated. Each one intentional. You never signed them prominently. They carry your presence without your name. They are not masterpieces. They are observations, captures, echoes. In quiet temples, monks still chant your name before morning practice. Not to pray, to remember. That breath matters more than volume. That posture matters more than posture. That presence does not demand acknowledgement. At military academies, your 5 rings is read between lectures on leadership. Students underline words like timing, observation, decisiveness, but they forget your other lesson. To leave no unnecessary trace. To master movement but prefer stillness. To carry skill but not the need to display it. A few understand. Most do not. That too is expected. In a small bookshop, a reprint of your scroll lies untouched for weeks. Then one day someone opens it, reads one sentence, and closes it again. They don't buy it, but they remember the line. Perceive that which cannot be seen with the eye. They begin watching more carefully after that. They begin noticing the pauses in conversation, the tension in still bodies, the way leaves fall unevenly. Your teaching continues, without classrooms, without schedules, without volume. Now the day closes. The sky dims to a low silver hush. The light no longer slants. It lingers soft and even spread across the ground like a final cloth laid gently over the body of the world. The wind pauses. Birds nest without song. You are not here, but you are not gone. Your words remain. In the quiet pages of a book handled without urgency. In the bow of a student who knows better than to ask for correction. In the silence of a room where nothing is moving, yet nothing is idle. You remain, a sword at rest, an eye that does not blink, a question that does not press. The students still train. They wake early. They stand quietly. They grip the sword not to strike, but to understand. Some train with 2 hands, some with 1. Some carry 2 swords, unsure what to do with the second. They will learn, if they stay long enough in stillness, if they let the rhythm rise through them. A teacher sets down your scrolls with reverence. He does not interpret. He simply reads. In strategy, it is important to see distant things as if they were close and to take a distanced view of close things. He pauses, lets the room absorb the shape of that sentence, then turns the page. Elsewhere, a young person sets down a phone, picks up your book, reads slowly, then stops on a single line and does not move past it. That line remains, long after the book is closed. In the hills of Kyushu, a man walks the trail that leads to Reigondo. He stops part way, not because he is tired, but because the silence has reached him. He does not continue. He turns and walks back with his shoulders relaxed. He will return, not to arrive, but to listen. Your grave is unchanged, your name carved shallowly. your body placed upright as you requested. Some call it poetic. Others call it proud. You called it correct. The way one should face the world. Still, prepared, present, even in death. Visitors leave nothing. No coins, no flowers, no offerings, only breath. Only bowed heads. A fringe legend says that if you sit beside your grave at midnight and remain still long enough, your heartbeat can be heard in the earth. No proof. But some wait anyway, not to hear you, to hear themselves. Now your name is passed on, not as warning, not as story, as shape, as rhythm, as lesson. That to live with purpose is not to seek victory. That to move with clarity is to need no audience. That to strike without anger is to strike with truth. That to hold still is not to lose time, but to let it pass through. The scrolls remain. The brush strokes endure. The cave remains open. The path remains walked. The grave remains upright. The world moves forward. But you do not move away. You remain here, exactly where you stood, exactly as you taught, exactly as you chose. Still, empty, unyielding, present. Now take a slow breath in. Let it stretch all the way to the bottom of your ribs, and release it gently with no rush. Feel the weight of your arms where they rest. Feel the air around you still and soft. There is no sword to carry now, no duel to prepare for, no scroll to write. There is only breath and stillness. You've walked a long road tonight. From the hills of Harima Province to the shores of Ganryu Island. From the strike of wood on bone to the silence of ink meeting paper. From discipline to detachment. From tension to ease. Let the sounds fade now. Let your thoughts stretch out, then drift. You are not holding anything. There is no weight to balance. Only this moment. Only this breath. Let the echo of footsteps grow faint. Let the rhythm slow. Let the voice soften. You don't have to remember the sword forms. You don't have to study the scrolls. You only have to rest. And let what remains remain. The cave is quiet. The stone is cool. The light fades. Now close your eyes. There is nothing left to reach for. You're already still. You're already enough. Good night.